This lesson, we started out doing a pair share. We're doing some comparisons of other groups of animals that we have already learned about that are vertebrates. So what I'd like you to do first at your group, you have your notes and your mammal notes. I want you to go back and take a look at your mammal notes. And I want you to, with your partner who is beside you, I want the person who is sitting in the same position as Nadia, where you are, you have someone sitting in that position. You're going to talk first to the person who's to your right, the person who is in the same position as Alicia. You're going to talk first to the person who is to your left, okay? And you're going to talk to them about mammals. And what you're going to tell that person is what characteristics are going to let you know when you see an animal, whether they are a mammal or not. We'll give you about 30 seconds. And then after that, the person that you were talking to is going to add anything to that they think that you left off. They're going to share that with you if they think that you left something off about what you need to identify a mammal and what characteristics make a mammal. All right, questions? All right, take a look at your notes. All right, first person, go ahead and share with the person that is your partner, is their body. Nicholas, give me another characteristic.
Have mammary glands.
Okay, can you tell us about mammary glands?
They produce milk for the babies.
All right, mammary glands produce milk for their babies. Hannah, give me another characteristic.
Some are omnivores.
All right, and what does that mean if they're omnivores?
They eat plants and meat.
Okay, so that's not going to be for all of them though, and that's something we'd have to watch to see if they're doing. All right, something else, Summer?
They're warm-blooded.
Warm-blooded. What does it mean that they're warm-blooded?
Their bodies are always warm because of their food.
Okay, so they eat food that makes them warm. All right, what's something else, Hannah, that nobody told me? Excuse me, Peyton.
They have a gestation period. Most of them have a gestation period.
Okay, what does that mean if they have a gestation period?
They're developing inside their mother, and then they'll be born live.
Okay, so they're born live. Most of them are. We said there are a couple of exceptions. And the gestation period tells how long it takes for them to develop. That's something you learn from. When we were looking at mammals, we said mammals have some specific characteristics, and then we can break them down into smaller groups. They're still mammals. They still have a vertebrate. They still have the characteristics of mammals, but then they have some special things that put them into smaller groups. So the same is true for birds. So what we're looking at now is if it's a bird, then it has all these characteristics. And certainly, first of all, these are vertebrates because all the animals we're looking at this week are vertebrates, so they have backbones. So first of all, what is going on with you? Their bodies are covered by feathers. About them standing, but yeah, they use them for standing, and they don't always stand on both of them. All right, now, so we're going to move on to looking specifically at birds' beaks. And you're going to be doing an investigation. At the back on the table, there's a container that has some different tools in it. The tools on the table are going to be similar to, shaped like, some bird beaks that you might see that birds have. So you have one that's similar to this. And here, what does that one look like? Which one?
Heron.
Think it looks like the heron?
I think it looks like that.
I think it looks like the one that eats the fish, like dives down.
The one that eats the fish? Hummingbirds, okay. So you're going to have some food that represents some different some things that represent some different kinds of foods. As you look at each one of those kinds of foods that you have, think about what it represents, okay? And you're going to be trying out each one of the kinds of foods, but we're going to have some rules about what you have to do. Whenever you're collecting your food, you have food in the little tiny containers. You can only pick up your food with your tool. You can't pick up the food out the container with your hand. So you have to use the tool to pick up the food. Now, if you drop the food on the floor and you pick up with your hand, you got to put it back in the beginning container, not into the container that's going to be like your stomach.
Okay.
You may only hold the food container. You can hold it with your hand, but you can't pick the food container up. You can't tilt the food container over. On your table, it has to go into the bowl because those bowls are going to represent your bird's stomach. Okay? So if it doesn't go into the bowl, you can't count it. And you're going to estimate, because I don't want us to take time to count little tiny sequence. So were you able to get all of the food out of your container and into your stomach using your beak in the 1 minute? Were you able to get half of it? Were you able to get 3/4 of it, or 1/4 of it, or none of it? Okay, so you're going to estimate about how much you were able to collect and put into your bowl. If you drop some on the table, you can use your tool to pick it up and put it into your bowl. Or if you want to put it back in the beginning container, you can use your hand to do that. But don't use your hand to put it into the bowl that's going to represent your stomach. Okay? All right, questions about picking up and how you're going to do that? Okay, as we're doing this, after each one of the minutes, I'm going to ask you to stop. I'm going to ask you to clean up your stuff after you've estimated and to put everything back into the small container. And then you're going to rotate. Now, this is important so that you can make sure you get all the food you're supposed to have. You're going to rotate the food around clockwise. You don't need to move. You just need to move your food around to the next person clockwise. If you have an extra food sitting on your table, make sure that you keep it in the rotation. Don't leave it sitting on the end until the last one, because if you do, that means somebody's not going to have food at the end to do their trial with. So make sure if there's food at the end of the table that nobody's using at the beginning, that you keep that in the rotation as you're passing the food around. Well, this is for each one. When we're doing the lesson, it's timed so that they have 1 minute to pick up each kind of food, and usually that goes pretty well. So I would just say making sure, also there were some rules that we set before we got started. Like there were some guidelines that they had to follow certain rules. So I would definitely make sure that you have some rules about how you're going to pick up the food or what you're going to be allowed to do so that it's a fair test and so everyone's doing the same thing. And we talked about that before we started the investigation, so I would recommend that you do that. All right, questions before you go to the back to get started and to choose your tool. All right, look right here where number 2. After you choose your tool, each person will choose your own tool, so everybody have a different tool. There's a prediction that you're going to make. You're going to look at your food without picking up any of it with your tools. You're looking at it, look at your tool, look at the food, and you're going to make a prediction about which foods you think will be easiest to pick up with your tool and which you think will be hardest to pick up with your tool. And that's going to go right here at number 2. If you think you need more room, then you can put number 2 on the back if you need more room to write it there. If not, put it right here. And then after that, you're going to get ready, and I'll tell you when to start your first trial, and I'll tell you when your minute starts, I'll tell you when your minute ends, and then we're going to do each rotation. Questions before we go to the back? All right, you need your paper and your pencil, and go ahead and choose your tool. And then when they went in the lab, they each chose their own tool, and they were trying out the different foods. And then after that, and after they collected data, explaining and estimating how much of each food they collected, they answered some questions analyzing what they had done about their particular beak and whether or not which foods they were successful with or were not successful with. And also they had to think about if they were using this beak again to pick up food, would they change the way that they picked up the food. And after they did that independently, then they discussed with their group which foods their beak were successful with, and then they discussed that and decided which of the types of birds' beaks would probably be most successful in finding food and which ones were not. So they had to actually share their data for their individual bird beaks with the other people in the group, because everybody had a different kind of beak that they were using as they tried out all the different kinds of foods. And not only were they looking at how much food they picked up, but I asked them to consider whether it was difficult to pick up the food or whether it was easy to pick up the food. And so they shared that with their group, and then we had discussion about beaks that were specialized for picking up certain foods or that could eat most kinds of foods. Discuss with your group 2 things. The first thing I want you to discuss is which type of beak, so you're going to have to share some information results you got, which type of beak would be able to eat a variety of foods. Variety means lots of different kinds of foods. So as you're looking at your foods and sharing with your group, look at each of the kinds of beaks and which ones were able to eat the most kinds of food and get quite a bit of that pretty easily. And what type of beak do you think would be more specialized? Specialized means that they might have only been able to get one kind of food or 2 kinds of food, they weren't able to get other kinds of food very easily, or they couldn't get any other kind of food besides maybe one. Okay? So share your results with your group, and I want you to be ready to tell me about these two things in about 3 minutes.
The water.
Well, the Twizzlers were able to get all the bees. It got pretty much more than half of the marbles. It got like, I would say half of the little gold thingies. And yes, ma'am. And it got all of the rubber bands. And I got the most water with the Twizzlers in the group.
Able to pick up about like the ones who had the dropper for the beak. There was a discussion about, you know, if the water had been in a different container besides a small test tube, then they probably would have been more successful with all of the beaks getting water. The spoon, was your spoon able to pick up all the kinds of food?
Except for water.
Except for water, did you get any of the water? None at all? Not even drops?
I got 20.
Okay. All right, your group, which one picked up the most food? The varieties of food. All right, so the same thing, and you were able to think of everything you said except for, did you get any water? All right, so you did get some little droplets of water, okay? And this group? The tweezers. You either have metal tweezers or the blue tweezers. All right, I want you to take a look at your conclusion on the bottom of your paper. Conclusion, we answer the question we started with. So your question was, how does the shape of a bird's beak and the kind of food available affect a bird's ability to collect food? So think about what you just did in your conversations you've had with your group about the different beaks. And I want you to go back and answer that question. And you have about 2 minutes to do that. And then you're going to put your name on it so you can give it to one person in your group to give to me. And then you need to put your notes in your notebook as we're finishing up. So if you haven't written your conclusion, or if you need to go back and look at it, do that now, please. I've done this lesson several times over the last few years, and I'm not really sure that there's anything I would do differently. Sometimes I, may add a different tool, but most of the time I find that it works pretty well the way that I've done it. I'm not sure that there's really anything that I would do differently. With you about, when I first saw this investigation, I wasn't really sure that it was something worthwhile, but after we did it the first time, I realized that it was very valuable in helping to see how different beaks function differently, and it really was a pretty good simulation of bird beaks and how they might work.